been there for 3 years now, and before that I worked for the National Trust at Gibbside, so again not far away from here, and I was there for 14 years, so that's a bit too long, isn't it? So moved to Wallington just for a change. So I'm going to just tell you a bit about the Beavers at Wallington, and I've been here a couple of years ago with Heather Debbie, who did a brilliant talk about beavers themselves and kind of beaver biology and ecology. So today I'm going to just mainly talk about the beavers at Wallington and what we've been doing since we released them into their enclosure. So why Wallington? So this is a map of Wallington. It's the biggest kind of intact estate that the National Trust have. It's 21 square miles, so it's a big estate. Anyone's been to Wallington, at the south boundary where you go over that humpback bridge, from there to the north is 7 miles, so it's a big stretch of land. And because it's so big, there's a lot of opportunity there. Like Lucy was talking about restoring natural processes and making better spaces for nature. So we've started doing a lot of work around the farms and woodlands, planting more trees, creating much wider hedgerows to connect woodlands up, re-wetting the land, blocking ditches, creating scrapes, restoring peat. And while we were doing this, we learned a bit about beavers, and I thought, well, beavers slow the flow of water, they help to clean water, they create diversity and structure in woodlands with their coppicing. Yeah, they're doing all of this, why don't we just bring them here and they can do it for us? So we applied for a licence, it's a 5-year enclosed licence. So at the time, beavers were only allowed to be released into enclosures in England. So we had to apply for to release them into an enclosure. Before we did that, the Beaver Trust and some people from Exeter University came to look at a few different sites around Wallington, to kind of measure how much food there would be available for beavers and assess where would be the best place to do it. So we looked at 7 different sites and decided on one site, and then we had to build the enclosure. So it's a big enclosure. It's 24 hectares. It's one of the bigger ones in the country, biggest beaver enclosures. It's got a big fence going around it, about 5 foot high. Near the watercourse, it's got this overhang because beavers can climb. And at the bottom, it goes down into the ground and has a bit of a skirt, like a fence under the ground, because beavers are really good at digging. And then where the river goes through the boundary, we've got these big metal grills. It looks like a lot of engineering for that level of water, but in a flood the water can be at the top of the grill, so it has to be really strong to withstand the pressure. The bars on the grill are 4 inches apart, and that lets otters through, but not beavers. Except it would let a baby beaver through, but the theory is they'd always come back to their parents. So yeah, the enclosure was funded by the Reese Foundation, and obviously took a lot to build that. And then some of the trees you can see inside the enclosure we put mesh around, because we didn't want the beavers to fell those trees and have them land on the fence. That would just hurt. So once the enclosure was in place and the licence was in place, we got our beaver family. There was a family of 4 brought from Tayside in Scotland. Mum, Dad, there was a kit who was just a year old, and a kit who had just been born. So the yearling was a male and the tiny kit was a female. And they were brought down from Scotland in Tayside, where they needed to be translocated. So that was July 2023 when they were released. part of our licence was that we have to monitor the beavers' health and condition. So when they were first released, we put food out for them. I've got a little video. Beavers are vegetarians. They don't eat fish, they don't eat any kind of invertebrates or meat. They love parsnips and carrots. So we put those out just to check they were all healthy and they were all looking to be a good weight. And they all settled in really well. I love this one because it just shows you how good they are manipulating their food with their front paws and how big their webbed back feet are as well. So they settled in straight away and they didn't need to eat our parsnips and things, they found their own food. There was signs of feeding straight away. And that's a typical kind of, you can see the teeth marks where they've been gnawing at trees. They've been eating, they eat, in the summer they eat all kinds of herbaceous plants, they even graze grass. But that's a piece of angelica, I think, that they'd been eating. And then they'd also started to fell some smaller trees and started to build dams, which was great to see them doing from the start. I've got some, if you want to come and see the teeth and just feel the teeth marks afterwards, I've got some. Yeah, so they started to take material to build dams. And this is one of the beavers building a dam. So they don't only use sticks. This beaver's digging. You can see its front paws digging mud. They dig clumps of mud and they use stones at the base of the dam and they'll pack it all in. That's it. And then they'll use the sticks as well on top of it. So it really streamlined in the water, and on land they can stand on their back feet and carry things in their front paws, so they can carry quite heavy stones. And then this next one shows the mother beaver, and she was starting to build a dam, and the little baby beaver is swimming in the pool behind her, so it was just splashing about. I've got lots of videos. My kids are good beavers. And then the other behaviour we were looking out for, beavers do a lot of grooming, and their furs, keeping their fur in good condition is really important. They've got two types of fur. The upper sort of coat is really coarse and protective, and then the undercoat is very fluffy. There's a great fact. So on a piece of skin the size of a postage stamp, a beaver has more hairs than there is on a human head. So it's really densely packed, and that gives them insulation. They're active all year round, so they need to keep warm as well in the winter. And looking after that coat is really important. So we wanted to make sure their normal grooming behaviour was happening as well. And then this is the mum and dad beaver grooming each other. Again, it's signs of sort of bonding, so we were really pleased to see that they were still having a good groom and a scratch and just behaving normally and still really settled together. So after only about 3 weeks, we found this dam. It was about 2 foot high, holding back quite a lot of water. It didn't take them long at all, which was brilliant to see. And soon after that, there was a series of 3 dams up the little stream. But that autumn, October 2023, we had Storm Babette. I don't know if people remember that. There was an awful lot of rain all at once. And then that autumn and winter, it just didn't seem to stop raining. and it washed the dams out. The beavers would go back when the water level dropped to try and repair them, but it just kept washing some of them out. So talking to the Beaver Trust, they advised us we could put in some posts into the river so that it could give the beavers something to build a dam against. Obviously normally we wouldn't interfere, but the beavers are in an enclosure and they can't move to somewhere else where the river's not as flashy. So we put some posts in, and you can just see them on the left there, the posts, and the beavers started to build their dams against those. It was great to see. And now, sort of 2 years on, they've got a lot of their own kind of natural dams because we haven't had as strong rain since then. It'll be really interesting to see the next time we do get really heavy rain, because the beavers have had much longer now to build the dams and make them strong, just to see how well they last. So yeah, we just kept another close eye on beaver tails, so it's very difficult to tell the beavers apart. There's no difference in size or in colour between males and females. So one thing we did know, when they were being moved from Scotland, we got photographs of all their tails, so we could sort of tell some of them, the male and female, apart by their tail. So this is Dad Beaver. You can see sort of notches and scars and different coloured patches on his tail. So that's one way that we can know that they're all, sort of the individuals are all still there and still healthy. So yeah, that was right through 2023. They were still battling on through those winter storms and all the rain. But then by July of 2024, we had another little kit.
Aww.
So the kits are born in May usually, but don't come out of the lodge. That's not the size of a beaver kit. But because their fur is so dense, it holds a lot of water and it makes them really buoyant. So the lodge entrance is underwater, so they're born in the lodge, and they're so buoyant they can't dive to get out of the lodge, which is sort of a survival strategy, because once they're out and in the open water, they need to be able to dive for safety. So we didn't see it until July, and that's when the kit first came out. Yeah, so that meant a family of 5 now in the enclosure. And it was brilliant, they kept building dams over the spring and summer, and over the winter they did really well. We were expecting maybe another kit this year, and we had footage of 2 kits and we were over the moon. And we thought, that's brilliant, that they're doing really well, the mother's healthy, she can raise 2 kits. And then we moved the cameras, and then we found there was actually 4. That big one at the back is last year, 2024's kit, and then there's 2 at the side, 2 in the water there. So we've got 4 kids this year, which is brilliant. That's quite, you don't get usually more than 4, that's quite impressive, so it's brilliant that they've been able to raise 4 little kids. So we're keeping an eye on all of those now. So with the 4 born this year, we did have to move 1 beaver out earlier this year. So we've got 8 beavers in there at the minute. But I'll come back to tell you about that, the beaver we moved out later. Just have a quick. So this is an aerial picture of the centre of the enclosure before there was any beavers there. The river, you could walk through the river in wellies, but when you were standing in the river bank was probably up to here. That the river channel itself had been eroded away over lots of years. It was quite fast flowing. A lot of the drain, the land drains were draining into it, and it had been manipulated to take the water away quickly, so it had eroded away and really incised in the channel. I'll probably go back and forwards between these two photos, but this photo, so remember that, and then that was just over a year later, so the beavers had been in just over a year at that point, and you can see that, the main dam just in the middle. I've got some closer photos of it, but you can just see how the water spread out and risen, and how much more water the land is holding there. The depth behind those dams is about 1.5 metres. So it's really risen up and connected the water out to the floodplain and really slowed it down as well. It's been great to see. So that's the main dam. You can see it's got that lovely curve, and the water's spreading out and following the old paleo channels to really re-wet the land. We've seen the biggest difference this year in the number of clumps of foxborn. Now the pools have really formed and slowed down. There wasn't any records of foxborn there before beavers. In the first year there was 1 clump, and then this year there was dozens. And the ground is covered in toads as well, so it's just brilliant amphibian habitat. You can just see how good it will be for invertebrates and insects, and then obviously bats, birds, and just following on from there just makes it a really rich habitat. This is at the second biggest dam. You can see just about see those wooden posts we've put in, that the beavers built the dam against, but then they've extended it beyond as well. That's it. So before we release the beaver, the purpose of having an enclosure is kind of you've got the beavers in an enclosed space so you can monitor the impact that they're having. And we worked with Newcastle University, the Environment Agency, Natural England, the Natural History Society of Northumbria, to gather some data, some kind of baseline data before the beavers were released. So we had the river invertebrate surveys, a fish survey, white-clawed crayfish surveys, bird surveys, botany surveys, and they're all ongoing, so we can see how they change as the beavers change the habitat. So this one's just that's a white-clawed crayfish. So there hadn't been many studies on the impacts of beavers on white-clawed crayfish, so this will be really interesting when we get findings to see how it changes the habitat for crayfish. The Wansbeck and the tributaries to the Wansbeck have a really dense white-clawed crayfish population, so it'll be interesting to see with the dams slowing the flow of water and silt gathering, how that impacts on crayfish numbers and size. This one, you have to look really closely. This one, there is a bat that flies up and down the river. Not that. It's right near the water. So the water's really slowed down there, and when you're there on an evening, there's lots of insects, so it's been brilliant to see the numbers of bats feeding over there. And as the water level's rising, we can see some of the older trees dying off because they're waterlogged. So it's not from the beavers haven't started to fell them, but they're starting to die off, and all that dead wood's going to make them brilliant habitat again for roosting bats and nesting birds and insects. And then we've had this year some fantastic volunteers come to survey for dragonflies, and they found 7 species within the enclosure this year. And we're really excited to see next year's. After surveying upstream from the enclosure, they found 2 species. So compared to 7 within the enclosure after only 2 years, it's pretty impressive. So yeah, we're really excited about what we'll find there next year. So as well as monitoring the different wildlife species, we've been trying to do quite a lot of engagement with people. The enclosure is not near the main visitor hub at Wallington. There's no public access to it, but we've been trying to talk to visitors about beavers. And they get to build little mini dams and kind of see how difficult that actually is to hold water back, using those materials. Little beaver masks. I know you're laughing, but I stayed in the line. But it's just a good way to talk to little ones about beaver teeth and how they eat and what they do with the trees they know and fell. But there's nothing that beats really taking people to the beaver enclosure and seeing the signs and the dams and all the feeding signs, and being there on the ground. So beavers are nocturnal, so it's quite difficult to see a beaver itself, but just to see the impact that beavers are having on the ground and the wetlands has been fantastic. And because anyone who's grown up in England hasn't grown up with beavers or really learning a lot about beavers, we're finding a lot of these education days and trips to the beaver enclosure are really valuable. There's people who we've taken up there and they say, well, where's the enclosure? And I say, well, we're standing in it. I say, oh, well, I thought it was going to be like the guinea pig enclosure at the park. But all beavers are a bit bigger than that. I mean, bigger space, but people just don't know, because why would we? So taking people there has been the most valuable thing. And we've had a lot of demand from people who want to go and see them, which our team, we don't have a ranger dedicated to beavers, so we can only spend so much time on that. So we started working with Wallington, who are a community interest company, who do all kinds of wildlife experiences in the northeast. And they've got a lot of experience, 10 years plus of working with beavers all around Europe. And they've been running some daytime beaver enclosure safaris, and also some dusk and dawn beaver watching. And so they started in spring 2024, and they've taken over 500 people into the enclosure now. So that's been all kinds of people, from locals, people from across the country, but landowners, farmers, school groups, lots of different people that they've been able to share that with, which has been fantastic. And they do have some autumn and winter safari dates on their website if anyone is interested. So that's Wallington. And these education days and tours have been really beneficial to us to kind of gauge the attitude and how people are feeling about beavers, because the next stage could be a wild release of beavers. It wouldn't just be a case of us taking the fences away around our enclosure. We'd have to work much wider with other landowners across the Wansbeck catchment. It's not something we're starting on, we haven't got an application in, but there's a lot of background work that would need to go into that, and we're starting to try and engage how people are feeling about beavers, and so there was a student from Glasgow University who's recently done a bit of a research project into, they compared how people felt about our enclosure compared to wild released beavers in Scotland. And these were the answers that they got from a question asking people to summarise how they felt about reintroductions in one word. This was the answers about Wallington. So it's pretty positive is the biggest one, so it's really positive. It's great to see answers like curious and intrigued and interested, that people want to learn more. But there's obviously also people who are against it, indifferent, they think it's a negative thing. And that's good to know. That's where we are. There's still a lot of questions about beavers. Like I said, there's a lot of people don't know about beavers. There's a lot of kind of ways to live with beavers that we can learn from Europe and from Scotland. So there's lots of things we can put in place, but it's good to know where we're starting from, and we can listen to those people and hear about why they're feeling negative and where their concerns are. This is just a final little video of our beavers. In the winter, beavers eat tree bark. So this is a tree that they felled. They've taken the branches away for their dams, and they're just stripping the bark off the tree. That's where they get their nutrition from in the winter. But yes, that's me. Oh, I didn't tell you about the beaver that we had to take away. And you might have, it's not a secret, people might already know. The yearling beaver that was released, the young male, when he got to about 2 years old, he escaped. Long story short, he escaped 3 times. So on the 3rd time, obviously we caught him and brought him back twice. And on the 3rd time, talking to the Beaver Trust, we said he doesn't want to be in the enclosure. He was kind of driven to find a mate, and he wasn't going to find one in Northumberland. So when we caught him, we took him to a holding facility that the Beaver Trust have, and he was matched with a mate, and they were released into their own enclosure in Wales. So that's why he's not with us anymore. But our cameras showing the other beavers in the family, they all seem to be just settling in well together. It's not really always males that want to get out and make their own territory. It can be the females, but the first young female from 2023 seems to be settled in the family and in the family group. So that's really good to see.